Good morning, all of you guys out there in YouTube land. How y'all doing? This is Yamez with holy shit! I didn't change my the under the picture stuff. I'll get that in a minute. This is Yamez here with Alan LaForge with Impractical Blacksmiths. With me today is Alexis and I always forget your name. The other bearded one, my doppelganger.
Yeah, the other one. That's all right. That works.
Adam. That's his name, Adam. Yeah, he's here with Alexis and the other one. uh, we're back for our fortnightly, fort daily, fort daily show. Every fort days, every fortnight. Um,
Only
Sorry, you broke up a lot there. What'd you say?
said only if it's a couch fort.
Right? Oh, I miss couch forts. So today we're going to be forging hinges for the doors for our couch forts. No. um, Shane is a doppelganger. Trail Dust brought up. I thought Shane was your doppelganger. Shane 100% looks like me. Like, it's like you. This is a Spider-Man scene. Anyway, welcome to the Impractical Blacksmiths, our Sunday morning blacksmith talk show where we talk about the lives and times of blacksmiths in the modern age. Everything from how to work with the metal and how to live with people who grump about you working with said metals and stuff like that, and everything in between. I guess is a good way to kind of put what our show's about. It's the lives of blacksmiths. Like, it's like the hidden lives of the blacksmiths. We're so mysterious. I guess. I'm a bit all over the place. Still drink my coffee, so take that for what it is. So I guess we'll move on to the how was your 2 weeks section of the show, where we just kind of catch up with each other. Like we said, we try not to talk too much during the pre-show so that we give you guys some awesome content. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I'll go.
There we go.
Yeah. So how was my fortnight? It's been a roller coaster. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I've accomplished some things that I didn't think I could do. I've successfully weaned myself off of so far, needing a few drinks to go to sleep at night, which has been absolutely fabulous. I'm so glad that I'm no longer just laying here staring at the ceiling for hours and hours and hours, listening to the voices tell me, "You can't do this, you can't do this," and so I got that. I got that little thing maybe nipped in the bud. We'll see. Um, it could change. I mean, like, I could say that now, and then tonight I'm just gonna be laying here going, "Damn, I really shouldn't have mentioned that.
Nah.
I jinxed myself." But I got that situation going on, and if any of you might have noticed my Facebook post this morning, I kind of lost my rings for a bit trying to wait, and I want you guys to know I'm okay. I'm just not okay up here, but I'm okay, and I'm dealing with the situation as best I can. I'm working on it, and I don't really want to get into it any further than that. Um, what else? Man, I finally got to work this week. After having 14 days off, that was rough. I'm telling you, especially with like the trips coming up and all that, and uh, it's real hard to go. Okay, I need to buy plane tickets for this. I need to buy plane tickets for that. I need to plan for this. I need to plan for that. And then you just sit here not working, and it's like if I'm not working, I'm not paying bills. And if I ain't paying bills, I don't have any spare money to, you know, pay for my trips. And so that's been super stressful. Uh, and hopefully we're coming out the backside of that. I don't really know. I'll find out tomorrow when I go into the office and check the board and whatnot. I just got in this morning from a night shift, and I got about an hour nap in between taking care of some stuff on the computer and then popping in here to get started. And yeah, that's about my 2 weeks, I think. And there was something else I wanted. Oh yeah. I did do a show earlier in the week. My what I want to call my final episode of Alexis Unhinged, which was where I polished off the last of my vodka. And I thought we had a pretty decent show. I did 3 hours, and it actually wound up being a lot of fun chasing squirrels. It really did. I had a good time. I think everybody else had a good time. But it was time for me to kind of put a pin in that show format, just because it was time. I think it's played its course. While it was fun to do, and I know it was fun for everybody else, I really needed to come up with something different, and I think I've got a good idea moving forward, and it's going to be something along the lines of chasing squirrels or down the rabbit hole or something like that. Maybe it's a toss up of whether I want to do this as a book or do this as a show. And so I don't really even know how that's going to go yet. I'm going to start writing, and I'm going to see where that goes. But it may be an interesting show. It may be a better book. I don't know. I'm going to see how that goes. And other than that, I'm having a cup of coffee that'll sustain me through the remainder of this little episode before I go back to sleep. And Adam, how was your fortnight?
I have had last week I worked, and this week it was my week off, but I have had a rather challenging week, to say the least. So Monday to Friday, well, actually, I should say Monday to Friday morning was relatively smooth. I was doing some forging. I'm trying to get my website up and running and get some stuff for sale. I made some more incense burner holders in my style. Yes, they're feathers, but they're also they're channeled so that the ash gets caught in the channel and stuff like that. So I spent the week setting up and forging and making stock and whatnot. And then Friday, I was out in my workshop, and I've been using the gas forge lately. And I get a Snapchat from my wife as she's coming home from work of a hell of a lot of smoke on the road. And it's this time of year, fires aren't uncommon, whatnot. And I send her a message back saying, "Where's that?" And about 30 seconds later, she pulls up outside my workshop and goes, "That's here." And so I go, "What are you talking about?" So I turn my forge off, and as we all know, gas forges can be rather loud and rather roary. I step outside and I can hear the fire. So we quickly jump in her car and drive down the 400 meters, which is what I can't remember that to feet. 4, 3, 4, 8, 12, about 1,200 feet ish. Yeah, to the front of our block, and we have a raging bushfire that is halfway up that, so it's already 800 feet from where she'd just seen it on the edge of the road when she pulled in, and there was fires everywhere. Now, in that time, we've got back to our house. A fiery fighter has come up with us, and the fire is within 20 feet of the clearing of our house. So I spent Friday afternoon fighting fire. My tractor just about went up in flames. I've lost the seat on it. Luckily, it's not too damaged. The backhoe attachment I had, it went through the fire. The seat's gone on that, and I have to check all the hydraulics. Luckily, it went around the house. It didn't take the workshop or anything like that. But then I also have a couple of my father's cars at the back of my block, probably about another 40 or 50 feet from the house. So I've rushed up there to try and quickly backburn. And I have a 20-foot wall of flames coming at me, and it got within 8 feet of me. I had to dive into my car through my passenger side and take off around the side of the shipping container behind the cars until it kind of died down on one side and then basically floor it through the flames so that I didn't get caught, and turned out to be a rather crispy smith. I get back to the house. Around the house is relatively being put out. We haven't lost anything around the house, apart from, like I said, the backhoe and stuff like that. And then once the flames had actually got past where the cars were, me and another firefighter went up to where the cars were and the interior of, and these are 70s, so you guys wouldn't have this, but if you think of the old, I think the El Camino utes, the old from the 70s. So we have my dad had two Holden HQs utes, which the Caminos were based on. The small light trucks the Caminos were based on. Two up there, and the fires got into the interior of one of them and burnt it out, and half burnt out the interior of another one, which is thousands of dollars, considering they don't Holden as a General Motors Holden doesn't exist anymore. So these are classic cars on top of, they don't manufacture, they're from the 70s, they're classic cars, and they also, Holden doesn't exist anymore, so this added to the value. One was, the interior was completely burnt out, the other one partially burnt out. Luckily, the running gear and stuff weren't damaged, but, the fire damaged the outside, and of course, water damage on the inside. So in a matter of 20 odd minutes, my entire block is black. It burnt out. Now, it wasn't as bad a couple of years ago in the fires on the East Coast, where a lot of Smiths and a lot of people we all knew lost quite a lot. Not that bad. I didn't lose anything major. My dad's very upset with me because I didn't manage to save the cars, but it is what it is. And in that time that I was fighting the fire, I was actually supposed to be setting up to go to a demonstration on Saturday, which I ended up doing, but that was, and I was happy for that and it was all good, but I was absolutely exhausted. So basically it's been dealing with the fallout of the fire. Now, from what we can figure, the fire actually started about a mile away at a building site. Someone's building a house out here. But it may not have been them. It's been that dry here that someone could have flicked a cigarette out the window and set the grass on fire like that. But in the course of about an hour and a half, it burned over about 200 to 300 acres of land was burnt out in a maximum of an hour and a half. It just went. And like I said, it was moving fast and it got rather crispy, very close to being a crispy Smith for me. Crispy Smith is a pretty good name for a forge. But
I was just thinking that. It's like, hi, I'm Adam with the Crispy Smith Forge.
Yeah.
But so it's this weekend has been rather challenging. And the money that I because it's actually tax time here. It's when we're doing all our taxes. I'm looking at a fairly decent tax return, which I'm planning on putting towards another tractor, because of course, as I've spoken about, my tractor is currently broken down, but it's also a classic tractor. It was built in 1963. And I want to rebuild it and restore it and make it all pretty and all that type of thing. But I still need a working piece of machinery. So now it's a matter of figuring out how to effectively use my tax return in order to maximize the outcomes. Whereas before this whole debacle, it was a little bit easier and I didn't have to worry about half the things I now have to confirm myself with. So, it's been rather challenging, and needless to say, I'm over this week. I can't wait to go back to work, which is a strange thing for me to say, but it is what it is, and it's part of living in the part of the world that I live in. But and it was something that I think then in conversations with some of the firefighters that I've spoken to, it was easily avoidable had bureaucracy not gotten in the way. I'd had planned for mitigating this situation in March, April this year, like late March, early April. Unfortunately, bureaucracy got in the way and prevented me from taking the actions that I wanted to do in order to prevent this situation, which has caused a loss for me. But on that same note, you know, as bureaucracy tends to do, they turn around and go, "Well, it was not our fault." So basically, that's the entire situation for me. Now, before any, I'm not at all saying, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm not in a bad situation. Like I said, the house is safe, all the people are safe, most of my property is safe, all the animals are safe. I haven't really lost anything of substance, but it's just made my life a little bit more extra interesting for the next couple of months anyway. Because some of the funds that were, you know, earmarked for that for my tax return and tax like that was actually earmarked to go into a savings account for my eventual US trip. But now, unfortunately, that's kind of gone. Well, now I need to do this and this and this and this, and it's kind of been another setback for my US trip. So yeah, unfortunately, that's the way it is, and I just have to make the best of what I got. And luckily, like I said, thankfully everyone's safe, everyone's sound, and everything's all good. So that's the positive of the situation, because you always got to look on the bright side.
What you're basically saying is you're never going to make it here.
No, the way I see it, something's preventing me from going right now. So that means that when I eventually get there, it's going to be a absolutely mind-blowing trip. That's the way I see it. You know, if it's everything's, the stars aren't aligning to prevent me to go now. So when I go, the stars align, and it's just like a mind-blowing trip for everyone.
Maybe skip this year and aim for next year.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, because maybe next year I'll be in a better position to, because my truck is having issues again, and it's like I'm not even driving it over to my brother's place because, you know, the past two times that I did, it's been having issues. So if I go to Quad State this year, I'm flying or renting. I don't know. But yeah, I can't really compete. Like, I cut some wood and stacked it. You know, about a cord of wood I split and moved across from one side of the yard to the other. You know.
Hell, I'm sorry. I was gonna say I got some wood and then I thought you were talking about something completely different. My bad.
Yeah.
But
I also tore down. Alexis would know this deck, that concrete deck that's over at the Windfall House at my brother's place.
Yeah.
Took some hammers, broke a hammer, broke an 8-pound sledge on it. Had to use jackhammers and chisels and stuff to tear it apart. And now I've got it halfway done. I've got a pile of concrete and cinder blocks. It's about up to my shoulders on one side of it, and I moved this, stairs. I could actually pull up pictures. Let's see if that comes through. Yeah, sort of. It's a bit washed, but whatever. That's the. And that's it torn down, And then put some stairs there. Yeah. So, yeah. Just, back-breaking labor. And it feels good to do. It's just I'm getting too old for that shit. But I didn't have to deal with a fire. I didn't have to deal with any other issues. So, I guess,
Did you ever get cabinets put up in there?
Yeah. Yeah, we've got cabinets in there. Not upper
Okay,
cabinets because of the not upper cabinets because of the shape of the shape of the ceiling. You know, it's that slanted. Like if you were to put the upper cabinets over by the sink wall, it would be the cabinets would be like 12 inches from the countertop, and that's really low. So we're probably going to put some shelves up. Just haven't done it yet. We've been focusing on other stuff. But
fair enough.
yeah, everybody's talking about when they, like, yep, John has fixed my truck at Quad State. Ben has fixed my truck at Quad State. Alexis has fixed my truck on the way to Quad State. Bob had to deal with it on the way back from Quad State. Every year I've also done something to my truck on, or just before Quad State. Right now the issue is the brakes. I drove over to my brother's house, and when I pulled up, my driver's side front wheel was smoking, and the brakes had locked up on the front driver's side. And I let it cool down and went over to my neighbor's. This was like Memorial Day, and he used his tools to replace the calipers because the caliper was seized. I assume because it wasn't, everything else looked good. Replaced the calipers. It worked fine. The next time I went to my brother's, it worked fine on the way there. I backed the truck up into, up to his porch to unload a bunch of stuff to take to the dump. And, as I turned off of his street, I noticed my truck pulling to the left. I'm like, well, what the shit, and got to the dump and the tire was smoking, or the wheel was smoking again. I'm like, oh, come on. The caliper was locked up again. So nursed it back over there, opened the valve to let it bleed out a little bit and get some of the pressure out of there. It opened up, closed it back up, let it sit and cool down. And then when I left later that night, it was fine the whole way home, but I also didn't have to hit the brakes. It was such a wow night. It's a 45-minute drive with no traffic. And it goes through Elizabeth City, so it's like probably like highway and then city driving, country city driving through, and I didn't have to tap the brakes at all. It was every light was green, and it was fantastic. I didn't have to tap the brakes but twice. Once when I turned off of one road that intersected with the highway that I live on. And then once when I did the swoop from the highway into my parking area in my driveway, and it's like it was fine, but there's something wrong that I need to take care of, and it's like I got to take it to a place and get it worked on, but that costs money, and we are slow as bogus right now, so I'm driving the work trucks around. If crypto pops off, and I could pull some to cover some expenses, then absolutely, I'll be flying to Quad State or having my truck worked on, or trade my truck in for something reliable, something that doesn't have glow plugs, something that has spark plugs instead, if you catch my drift. Because nobody around here likes working on diesels. And it's like, but it's not the engine. Oh, I don't work on diesels. So, Adam, blessings in disguise. If you're stuck not being able to go to Quad State this year, I also may be stuck not going to Quad State this year. So next year, it's going to be a party.
Like I said, you need to get a new truck. The one's more of a lawn ornament.
Well-
you in the entire, and it's now been several years I've known you. You've always had constant issues with that vehicle.
It is, yeah. It legit is. It's constant issues. But yeah,
I reckon it's been off the road more than it's been on the road.
oh yeah. There was a period. There was a period after I think it was first or second quad state where it sat for 8 months. In my no, it sat for a year because I remember I drove to Ting Tings using the little Ford Explorer, you know, and that was like the spring after quad state. I got back from quad state and it's like it had some major freaking issues and it's like, yeah, let's not drive this around. Turns out that was the torque converter or something. I don't know, cost me about $3,000. And it's just, yeah, I you know what? Time to go back to gas where people will actually work on it, you know. And it doesn't cost an arm and a leg.
That just reminds me of the Talking song by Alan Jackson. You know, my talking boat running low on torque and the water pump
Right.
nearly down a quart.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I can bring it in for $900.
It's nuts. It's like, I hear a lot of people talk about electricians and how much they charge for things, and how expensive, skilled labor is. And so I can't fault the mechanics. It's like it does seem like a racket though. Like, like, okay, you bring your truck to somebody, your vehicle to somebody. If you're not the type to know what's, wrong with the vehicle, you can easily get taken advantage of. And the people that I trust to work on vehicles, the work trucks and everything, they don't work on diesel. They say, hey, here's what I think it is, but we don't do that here, So it's like taking that information, I can go to a place that works on diesel, and they say, well, this is a problem, yes, but there's also this problem. And I'm like, well, how much are they pulling my leg? How much are they, trying to tack on to the bottom line? It's like, Jeff Killian says, rent a U-Haul one way, end of week, rent it one the other way. Trouble is, here's the other problem with that. This would be the first time that I drive through the mountains to go to Quad State alone, and I've gotten worse and worse. We all know
Yamez hates mountain drive.
I've driven through the mountains before. I've driven solo through the mountains before, and I'm not a fan. I do think most of my issues with driving through the mountains in recent years is because of my truck and me not trusting the brakes and me not trusting that on the uphill the engine isn't going to die or something, which happens. So it's like, I think I would be like, when I was driving through in my Cavalier, I was fine. When I drove, I used to drive from Chicago to North Carolina in my Cavalier, or when I drove from Chicago to Key West and then back in my Cavalier, and then, all that stuff in my Cavalier through the mountains, I was fine because I trusted that car. The first few times I drove through with my truck, I was fine because I trusted the truck. Once I started having problems, it was like, I don't trust this thing to not have a problem and throw me off the mountain, So it's like, I don't like the heights and driving through the mountains, coupled with I don't trust my vehicle to not throw me off the side. So it's given this fear in my head of driving through the mountains. When I was driving my truck down to Florida after Irma, I had, the back loaded up with, several thousand pounds of food, donations, water, fuel, for the aftermath of Irma. But before I left, I stopped and got a tire changed at one of the roadside mechanics around here before I knew who I trusted. And they put now I've got a 2002 GMC Sierra 2500 HD turbo diesel Duramax, all the works. Okay. They put big truck, like 9,000 pounds unloaded, you know. And then I added, about 2,500 pounds, a bit overloaded, but not majorly. I've hauled worse since then. The guy who changed the tire, I don't know if he just didn't know what he was doing, but he put a tire that fit my rim on, which was good, but it was after the fact. I didn't even notice. It was a minivan tire. It was a passenger tire, not an LT tire. It was a P, not an LT, you know. So yeah, it's, I was driving and took a turn and the tire blew out. Almost flipped my truck. So I'm terrified of driving, long distance these days, and I'm good at it,
Let me just stop you right there. If you blew a tire and you almost flipped your truck, you were not good at driving. So I'm just saying.
It was in a curve coming down a hill, and it was the passenger tire.
Yeah, I've blown out steer tires on 80,000-pound vehicles and just been like, well, shit, pulling right over. Now, granted, I have both hands on the wheel, not just like driving with my wrist or my fingers, I mean. So when I've blown steer tires out, it's been a oh yeah, okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I've seen lots of fatal accidents where a trucker blew a steer tire and went across 6 lanes of traffic and head on somebody because they were completely unprepared for the possibility of blowing a tire. I mean, so it can happen, it can happen to anybody really. But I'm just busting your balls there, Yama. It's just busting your balls. Don't beat me up.
But yeah, we do have mandatory yearly testing. I'm actually due for another one here soon. And here's the thing, it would pass. The issues are not, they don't present themselves all the time. It's nuts. But like
your issues are in the closet.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like I'm probably gonna skip my registration this year and just take the truck off insurance and shelf it for until I can get it, fully looked over or traded in.
I say if you're going that way, maybe you ought to just like list it,
Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot to think on, because also, like I said, we're slow at work, so I can't afford a monthly truck or, car payment, vehicle payment,
Well, okay, but you don't have to get a payment. You can buy another beater that's not a diesel.
I ain't buying another beater. Not after, it's like the beater that I would get, that, with the price of used vehicles these days, the beater that I would get would be, I wouldn't be able to afford it.
Okay, here's the thing though. So over the course of my lifetime, I've probably owned 20 different vehicles, and I've spent less money in total on the beaters than I have on the new vehicles. Like maintenance wise, like the new vehicles that I've had, my Mercedes. I had a brand new Malibu. I had a brand new pickup. The maintenance on all of those, I spent way more in parts on those than I did buying parts for any of the beaters. I mean, like the old pickups I bought, an alternator's $30. Yeah, starter's $45. Nowadays you go down and buy a starter for a new vehicle, it's $300. Oh, an alternator, that's $600, and meanwhile, the parts for them beaters are still, like $50, $60. Obviously, they're a little bit more expensive now. It's been 20 years, but don't get me wrong. What you don't have is the cool touch screen interactive thing and things like that. But I don't know. I mean, shoot, I'm driving a pickup that's almost 20 years old. There's lots of little quirks with it. Sometimes some things don't work right. Uh, Sometimes you gotta smack the dash to get something to work. And while that does kind of suck, it also costs me nothing except for upkeep. When I buy my next vehicle, though, it's not going to be new. It's going to be old as shit because it's going to be easy to work on, and parts are going to be cheap. And that's really all I want. I mean, like I want to be able to stand in the engine compartment while I work on it.
Right.
But hey, that's just me because I'm not all about the needing to show off for my friends and have the newest, fanciest, nicest show of wealth to give me a status symbol.
What about me? What about me says that I would do that?
I do have nothing, but I do have to say that driving around in a yellow 1932 Ford high body with flames on the front still looks pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, like what about me says that I'll I mean, would it be nice to have like a 2025 freaking Chevy Silverado or freaking Dodge Ram or Toyota Hilux or whatever, like, oh yeah, that'd be cool as shit. That's like dream truck stuff, but like legit.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Legit, my personality type, my vehicle personality type is A to B, without worry. And it's like anything else is just bells and whistles. Like I feel fancy having electric windows in my truck. I'm not joking because my work trucks have roll downs. So yeah, I feel fancy having push button windows.
Trail Dust, my next vehicle is like 32 Ford high body with small block Chevy, turbo 350. It could be a 12 bolt or a 9-inch. It doesn't really matter to me, but that's what I'm going for. Just simple, and you turn the key and let's freaking go. It's going to get like 10 miles to the gallon. To be fair, I only drive 200 miles a month, so who cares?
I just realized we spent 45 minutes talking about the how was your fortnight, broke into the discussions with my truck. I had questions for Adam.
And it's not even my fault this time, so
So Adam, I assume all that grass that you were that gumma grass or whatever the heck you were talking about that you had to clear, I'm assuming that's all gone. So I want to talk silver linings here for what happened to you. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So yes, that's all gone, and that's the reason why they wanted it cleared in the first place. Is because that stuff burns hot, it burns fast, and it burns tall. That stuff can melt. That stuff can melt steel. So to give you an idea on just how bad this was, like I said, it started about a mile or so away. And it jumped 2 roads, so backwards and forwards, 2-lane roads, 2 single lane,
yeah,
not single lane, but regular
street
2-lane
road.
Yeah. Plus, up here, the sides of the roads are generally cleared 15 meters, so it jumped 2 30-meter wide spans. Okay, and then it jumped the main road, which is also a dual lane, but it's about 40 meters wide, plus an extra 15 meters that we had cleared. Right. That's how far these flames jumped.
Well,
and it just went. gone.
I want to talk. I want to talk more about the silver linings for you. Like
Yeah.
this. It's like the last time we talked about your property, you were working on tearing that down, and you had like X amount of time. You had, like this, and that, and everything. Hey, that's done now. That grass is gone now.
It is
So-
gone. And see, the thing is, like, so last time we spoke, we were talking about how, I was looking at getting a fine and stuff like that. So I'd actually contacted Weeds Management, which is the Department of Northern Territory Government. And I have a full drawn out plan over the next couple of years in order to combat that weed on my property. And so I actually got out of the fine because Weeds Management said, if all property owners were like you, we wouldn't have an issue. So they said, we're not looking at fining you now. It's all good. We can see you've made progress on your property. Fantastic. So I gotten out of the fine, and I was actively working on it. And now all the gamba grass is gone. The problem is with burning gamba grass, the seeds actually get into the ground, and it activates better when the fire's been through. It's an African grass, so when there's been a fire through, it actually germinates faster and germinates stronger. So this wet season, I'm actually going to have a worse gamba problem than last year. But in saying that, and that's the reason why a new machine, new tractor with the front bucket has become a priority for me, because now that it's burnt, if I can get a tractor in the close term before the wet season arrives and it starts raining, I'm able to clear a lot of the area that has prevented me from doing a wider boundary because of fallen logs and small trees and stuff like that. So I'll be able to clear out the dead stuff and the fallen stuff, which will allow me to slash a lot easier and keep that, and also poison, and keep that that gamba and start managing that gamba problem a lot more efficiently.
That's what I was kind of getting
fuel load. Yeah, it will reduce the fuel load, and it'll also make it safer for me to forge. It'll make it safer for me to make my own, because as a lot of people here would know, I make my own charcoal. And that's been a challenge with having all the gamba around, because a spark sets it off. So I'll be able to make my own charcoal again. But it also adds to the fact that with all this fallen timber, I can use that to make charcoal too. And Alexis, I saw you wave something. Did you want to say something?
Oh, I was going to ask you, what's the feasibility where you're at of just laying down glyphosate?
I can, and that's what we use for. That's the active ingredient in the poison that we use. That's the most effective one against gamba. The problem is the expense. So, like a 20-liter or what's that? It's
5 gallons.
I think
5
it's
gallon.
5 gallons. Yeah, so a 5-gallon container of glyphosate is about $500. So. Yeah, so we get every year we get a 5-liter free allocation. So that's 1 gallon free allocation from the government to help combat the gamba, and that's given out to everyone that lives rural that can have access to it. So basically, it's a matter of stepping it out and eradicating gamba where I can. If I can burn it early before it goes to seed, so I've got to use a like a multi-step process of A, slashing it, B, poisoning it, and C, burning it before it gets to seed. In order to burn it, though, I've got to have the 20-meter boundaries, because otherwise they won't give me the permits to burn. So I've got to have 15-meter boundaries. So I've got to have those 15-meter boundaries. What's that? 15 times 3, 45-foot boundary fire break in order to burn. So I've got to have that in before I can burn. So that comes back to having the machine, being able to clear that area around my boundaries, and then I'll have the ability to burn early and then poison as well, which will help. It's kind of a conglomerate thing. I get those 3 things done, and I'm sweet.
So what do you guys usually cut the glyphosate with?
Water
Water
and dishwashing,
like
and dishwashing detergent. Generally, a little bit of dishwashing detergent.
Okay, here I know back in the day, like mesquites or a pigum. They're very invasive, and they're very they use a lot of water. And so like a 2 foot tall mesquite has got a 90-foot taproot that's just sucking up water out of the water table. And so back in the day, I don't know if they still do or not, but I know when I was a kid, they used to cut the glyphosate 60/40 with diesel fuel. And they for 5 gallons of glyphosate, you'd have like 12 gallons of diesel mixed in with it. And and then they the farmers would drive around on their little tractors with the sprayers, just spraying their not like the whole land, but they sprayed the trees specifically. And I know the stuff that I bought back when at the last house I owned. That's what I did. Is I mixed it with diesel and put it in a pump sprayer and sprayed all the trees that way. It was quite effective because even the diesel by itself, to a certain extent, is very very effective at clearing off like the above ground part. Like it kills the diesel kills what it comes into contact with, but it doesn't actually kill the rhizome of the plant. And that's what you need the glyphosate for. The glyphosate keeps it from coming back.
Well, see, okay, so there's two things about that. So first of all, the greenies would have an absolute. I find through the freaking nose with diesel, and second of all, diesel here at the moment is about $8 a gallon. That's $2 a liter. so yeah, it's cheaper than the glyphosate itself, but it's still freaking expensive. So and considering I've got 40 acres to do, so like that 5 liters that I get free allocation makes about 100 liters of mixed poison.
Add salt. Boil the water. Do salt or salt water, heavy concentrate salt water, dish soap, and the glyphosate. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got this chemical that I use. I'm not sure the name of it. Don't ask me. I get it in like a 1 quart or a 2 quart bottle, and it's like $79 for the 2 quart bottle. Red bottle, red liquid. And I put it in a 2-gallon pump sprayer. And I do salt water, Dawn dish soap, and that. And it within 2 or 3 days, it's every single thing that it touches is dead, like gone. So I actually sprayed it. The big gumball tree that we've been fighting and where the source of all the wood and everything, Alexis, again, the tree, it's the one that was working on knocking down my shop. I took a chainsaw around the edge of this. I'll hug the tree like this. It's that big, I took a chainsaw and I dug lines around it, cut lines around the outside of it at an angle in, and then because it kept starting to grow again. I'm like, oh, come on, and then poured that around on the inside of the bark. Freaking dead. It's great, but I have the brush around here, not as bad as what you got, I'm sure, but it's I use that stuff to keep it down. Lasts for about 6 to 8 months. I do it where I know that I'm not going to be actively working on the property, to keep it down so that the next time when I rotate to that side of the property, it's not a jungle again. Like I'll deal with patches of dead, dead vegetation, to get to that. So
yeah. Well, see, and as I said to Thomas, in the chat, the gamba the seeds have a 7-year life cycle. So it's going to take me at least 10 years to eradicate gamba from my property, and then that's best case scenario because all the properties around me have gamba as well. So if they don't treat it, then I'm going to get the seeds back on my property. So this is going to be an ongoing long-term thing. Not that I'm worried. I mean, that's part of owning the property.
You could also just lay down 40 acres and call it good.
I could, but I mean, I also found out an interesting fact. I don't know if I've mentioned this in other weeks, but I found out that mesquite is actually a plant here in the Northern Territory as well. It was brought over in the late 1800s, early 1900s as an ornamental plant, and went wild. So we do get mesquite here. I just haven't seen it personally. So yeah, apparently it's a weed. It's not a noxious weed, but it is a weed here. So
It is quite invasive.
yeah. So I'm going to speak to some people that know things a little bit more better than me, and see if I can find some mesquite up here. So at least I can go, hey, look, I got a little bit of US here in Australia. But yeah, no. But yeah, so and also Thomas, the active ingredient in Roundup is glyphosate. So that's the primary active ingredient. Most of the rest of them are just made in wetting agents and stuff like and whatnot. But so yeah, I use a generic glyphosate here, and like I said, we get a 5 litre allocation every year for free, and basically, I'm not expected to see it, and with they had a change of legislation a few years ago, that anyone with a 5 acre property or smaller has to eradicate the gamba from their property completely every year. I'm lucky in the fact that because I have 40 acres, I'm not required to eradicate it. But as I witnessed over this weekend, and I knew anyway, but as I witnessed over this weekend, gamba is extremely dangerous, and also an absolute pain to deal with. Like I'm named Speargrass Forge. Speargrass is a naturally occurring tall growing grass here in Australia, here in the Northern Territory particularly. And it's very spindly and it can look untidy. Whereas if you've ever watched movies about being in Africa and like in the savannas and around the jungles, and you get those really thick, tall grasses that are like, that are 18 feet tall and stuff like that, that's gamba. And it's very thick. It's very woody. It's kind of reedy type looking, and it burns it's got a very broad leaf. It blocks out a lot of view, whereas as speargrass is kind of, I wouldn't say it looks more like bamboo, but it's very individual stalks as opposed to big clumps of it. So it's a lot more aesthetically pleasing to look at. And it doesn't burn as hot. And also being natural here, it's not as destructive. Like I said, I prefer speargrass. I wouldn't mind, and also speargrass when it dries out, particularly this time of year, it falls over. It collapses on itself, so it goes from being 6 to 8 foot tall to being 2 or 3 foot tall when it falls over. So you don't get those same heights in the roaring fire where gamba, as it dries out, it stays standing up. So you've got, if it's 12 foot tall for gamba, you get 30 foot flames from it, whereas speargrass doesn't provide that height for it as well. So gamba is also very destructive to the environment here. And here I am sounding like a greenie, but gamba grass is very destructive to the environment and the wildlife here because it gets up into the canopies of the trees and stuff like that, and it can burn a whole tree.
I put up I pulled up Google images of gamba grass.
Yeah.
It's kind of pretty.
One of them at least is from the end. Yeah, but it's very like thick and very and messy and spindly. Now, if you pull up speargrass, the name of my forge, just put a space in it, and you'll see the difference of what it looks like. Actually, put up before you do that, Yavis. Actually, pull up a gamba grass on fire, and you'll see the type of images that I lived just the other day. And then look up speargrass, and you'll see the difference in how it looks.
Huh.
Yeah, so speargrass is like, and to me, speargrass is more aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't get as tall, doesn't burn as hot.
There we go.
You know, and all, yeah. Also, as a
Did I lose? Okay.
yeah, as
Whoa.
yeah. Right, and so I was looking at walls of flame, like a wall of flame like that coming at me within 5 foot, and it was, and if you actually that good one, if you go back down, you see a 4-wheel drive in the midst of gamba grass, and it just shows you how really tall it is,
Yeah.
and when that's on fire, it's just ridiculous. So speargrass doesn't burn like that. So I want to get my block back to speargrass.
Otherwise,
so
you're gonna have to
that,
change your
it's safe.
forge name to Gamba Grass Forge.
Well, gamba grass, a burning gamba grass fire can melt steel.
Yeah.
Can burn steel.
Man.
So
Compared to
Not only does it do all,
compared to
not only do all the
speargrass
animals,
on fire.
so do the plants.
sorry, you're talking over the top of each other. What did you say, Alexis?
I said not only do all the animals in Australia want to kill you, so do the plants.
Yeah.
The environment wants to kill you. But yeah, so it's yeah, and so yeah, speargrass doesn't burn as high or as hot, and it's prettier in my opinion. And like I said, during the wet season, we have at the end of the wet season, the start of the dry season, we have what's called the knock 'em down winds. And you get fairly decent winds that knock over the speargrass, and it gets lower, as you can see in some of the pictures. It folds over, and so the fuel load doesn't get as high, and it's safer. So, and it's prettier. So yeah, I'm hoping to get my block back to that in the next couple of years, and make it safer and nice.
Random frog.
I was going to say, Deranged Metalworks kind of hit the nail on the head there. Gamba grass looks like what we call Johnson grass here in the States.
Yeah. And look, it could be the same. All I know is that gamba grass is an invasive species that was introduced from Africa, in order to because being an African grass, it's very hardy, and drought resistant as well. Like I said, the seeds last 7 years, so they can stay in the ground until the rains come, and it sprouts up really quickly. And it was used. It was introduced as cattle feed. That's why it was introduced, because speargrass is very low nutrient density. Gamba grass has a much higher nutrient density, so that's what it was introduced as. And then because it suited the environment here, it became a weed. As after all. And that's rabbits and foxes and cane toads and a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Oh, honestly, like the pictures that you're pulling up don't look anything like what I call Johnson grass.
Yeah.
That's here's the Johnson, what I consider Johnson grass are those big round like bundles of the grass. It's like 6 feet tall, and it's real like a cylindrical shape, with I mean they don't kind of like those. Yeah, well, that's gamba grass, but yeah.
Huh. Yeah.
Huh.
Interesting.
Now, we're horticulturists. Cool.
And now we've spent an entire episode or entire half an episode, because we don't have a time limit, but we've spent all this time talking about grass.
Well, it's
we've
topical.
kind of also been talking about fire. Yeah, and we've also been talking about fire. Yeah.
And we've been talking about trucks, and we've been talking about doesn't matter, because you're here to listen to us.
Oh no, I know. It's not like we have a subject and we have to like oh my gosh, when I did that episode earlier the week, my beginning topic was custom knives. Are they art or are they a tool? And then I started with that, and then and then I chased squirrels all night, and then there's Daniel steadily trying to get me back on topic. I thought we were talking about knives. I thought we were talking about knives. I thought we were talking about knives. I'm like, shut up! I'm chasing squirrels.
But like, yeah, no, like it is topical. I mean, as someone that lives, look, people in California, recently went through major fires, and I live in an area where we're susceptible to major fires. I mean, my whole bloody continent is susceptible to major fires. But so fire safety, and this is where I've been at loggerheads with some people in the fire brigade, because whilst I am not a fiery, someone in the fire brigade, a firefighter, being a smith and also growing up in an environment where we did burn-offs and stuff like that, I have a very good appreciation of how fire works in a field, of how fire works in nature. Not so much house fires. House fires I don't really have that much knowledge about, but solid fuel fires and contained fires, and also bushfires, I have a decent knowledge of. And it's a reason why I felt confident enough to go up and try and save my vehicles, because what I was attempting to do was backburn into the flame, so it didn't have any fuel to burn. Unfortunately, the wind picked up and it just moved too fast, and I didn't have a decent time to reduce that fuel load. And that, look, you can't battle Mother Nature, really. You can battle the effects of it, but if she decides that it's a screw you, it's going to be a screw you. So, but again, I tried to deal with this situation and get the permits to burn and get rid of the undergrowth at the start of the year in order to prevent this situation. And it's an argument that's happening across Australia, and I'm not sure if it's happening over there as much. But Australia, as a continent, as a landscape, for 40,000 years has been burnt like this. Has every year the indigenous population used to go out and burn certain aspects, to help control the amount of fuel. Yeah, but also, our trees here, eucalyptus trees, have evolved that they won't go to there are some species of eucalypts that won't go to seed, cannot go to seed unless they've been burnt. All right, so I don't know if anyone's actually had a look into it, but I can guarantee you those eucalypts in California, after those fires, would have gone nuts, because they're the species that need to be burnt in order to go to seed properly. Right, so if you look at 6 months after the California fires, I can guarantee you the eucalyptus trees down there would have looked amazing, because leaves would have come back, they would have all gone to flower and all sorts of things. Because, like I said, it's 40,000 years of evolution to get to a place where there are certain species of trees and stuff like that in plants here in Australia that will not germinate unless they've been through fire. Now, here in the Northern Territory, it used to be that most of the top end would get burnt off every year. Even as late as in early 2000s, late 1990s, early 2000s, we used to burn off every year. And we never, ever had major wildfires come through our area because it didn't have the fuel load. As late as the 1980s through Victoria and New South Wales, they used to have the same thing. Their national parks and stuff like that used to burn off every year or two to reduce the fuel load. And then later on, into the 90s and stuff like that, that there was change in legislation and they stopped doing that. And ever since then, every 5 to 10 years, there has been a major fire in New South Wales and Victoria that has caused widespread devastation and what we call black burning. So you have a bushfire and it goes through and, things get germinated and stuff like that. And that's a normal bushfire, whatnot. But when you have we call black burning, is where it burns so hot and so fast for such a period of time that everything dies. It's like looking at a nuclear blast. You know, everything is burnt to a crisp. Everything is black. There's no life left in that area, and you've got to wait, you know, years. And those scars can be visible for years. Sure, the life it does eventually come back, but you know, all your tall canopy, your trees and stuff like that are burnt and are dead, and you've got to wait for the new growth to grow up. So we call that black burning, and black burning in those parts of Australia is a relatively new phenomenon. It's only been going on for 30 or so years because those burn-offs don't happen anymore, that you get 10 years worth of leaves and sticks and all that type of thing. And if you think about how much, like particularly there in the autumn and stuff like that, how much leaf falling you get like that, right? And you know, your small house yards, for example, even if you've got a quarter acre or an acre block, you rake that up into a pile, multiply that by 10 years, and you've got a massive pile of fuel, you know? So that's what's happening across thousands of acres in parts of Australia, because they don't burn off on a regular basis, because they don't have the indigenous people have been burning here for thousands of years and maintaining that fuel load. And sure, it was, you know, Australia was a wild country, and there was no, you know, agricultural development. However, the land has been managed for 40,000 years. So, you know, it's only been recently that we've had these devastating fires, because now we're not doing what's been done for the last 40,000 years. And
I kind of see it.
So that's the.
I kind of see it with a similar thing over, like with the and anybody that lives over there in the California, in the left coast, the west coast, east coast, west coast over there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like it is my understanding that over there, you know, well, with as we know, like fires and wildfires and such is a natural part of the earth doing its thing, you know, and man comes along and tries to, you know, curtail that. Like, hey, you know, it's like let's like the brush clearing under, you know, in the forests over in you know, the west coast, right? Clearing all the dead brush, clearing the small scrub, you know, all the easily ignitable stuff out, and you know, logging and all that stuff to kind of like contain areas. Well, legislation comes across saying you can't do that, it's got to be natural. Well, okay, fire is part of the natural way, you know, a forest grows in the long term, like in the geological sense. So when you legislate away from, or legislate going back to a natural way of, you know, being, then you have to accept a natural way of being, which is fires. Is that about accurate?
Yeah, that's it. And it's a challenge in the sense that I understand the people that want to look after the environment and not use fire, because fire can be destructive. And a lot of Australia, you know, Australia is still growing. We don't have anywhere near the population of, you know, for example, the US, even though we have, you know, a very similar or comparable land mass. But it's gone more to asset protection. Even though it started as environmental protection, it's gone more to asset protection. And like I said, it's moved. I understand what those environmentally concerned people are on about, but on that same note, and I mean, there's farming and all sorts of concerns as well. We do have a lot of sugarcane. You get a bushfire and sugarcane; they don't mix. You lose acres and acres of sugarcane. Same thing with cotton. You know, you get a bushfire into a cotton field, you lose tens of thousands of dollars worth of cotton. So farmers are involved in it as well. We are also the driest continent and the driest nation in we're the driest continent in the world. So freshwater resources that are used in fighting fires is also a concern, So, yeah, but it's one of those situations where it's a lot of small things that have come together to result in a less than ideal outcome regarding the overall management of the environment and fires, particularly here in Australia. I mean, we have regular droughts, and we have. I know parts of Australia, like when about 10 years ago, when I moved back to Northern Territory from Queensland, I drove through central Queensland and Western Queensland, which was when I drove through was at the, unbeknownst at the time, was at the end of a 10-year drought. And I remember pulling up at a truck stop to stay the night and reaching and seeing grass and like it was dry grass, but reaching through a fence and touching the dry grass and have that grass turn to literal dust in my hand. That's how long the drought had been on, 10 years worth of drought. And so, a fire through something like that would be absolutely catastrophic. So I understand the mentality that goes towards it, but again, coming back to I grew up here. I also grew up with and interacting with the Indigenous peoples, or a sizable group of Indigenous people in Northern Territory. That a lot of people don't know this about me, but there are a certain group in the Northern Territory that recognise me as quote unquote Indigenous, even though I'm the whitest bloke you'll ever come across. I'm a white fella.
No.
And that's the colloquial term. So you got white fella. I'm non-Indigenous. But they recognise me as Indigenous, as part of their clan. I have a clan name, I have a skin name, I have a totem, after we call them a dreaming. I have my own dreaming. My family has our own dreaming. So I'm recognised by them as an Indigenous person because of my interaction with them, how I grew up. I did their initiation ceremonies and stuff like that. So they also have a tradition where, as a young man, so everyone's heard of secret men's business and secret women's business. So as a young man, I went and did my secret men's business with the other boys of my age, and we went on. So part of their adult coming of age rituals is you do what's called a walkabout. So you literally get taken out by the men and dropped in the middle of nowhere, and it's basically, you boys as a group get back to us, survive. Take as long as you need to, but you have to go from there to here and get back to us. And that's go and walkabout. So I went walkabout with these people. They also have a tribal scarring. Now, as a white fella, they also understood that I couldn't do the tribal scarring that they were a part of. However, I got a small scar to show, because I wanted to, because it was part of the culture, but I got a small scar to say, hey, I didn't just do this for the kudos. And they respected that. So I grew up immersed in that culture and surrounded by that culture, and I understand the link between people and the land here. And but I also sit on that cusp of, I am a white fella, and I will never fully understand the culture from being in the culture, being from the culture. That said, right, I also understand their frustration when whitefellas is mismanaging their land so badly and not following practices that have been, like I said, done for 40,000 years. This is that has actually be before civilization. So, and recently they actually found, and on a side note, chasing squirrels. In Queensland, they recently found some of the earliest pottery. So there was a Pacific civilization. I can't remember the name of the civilization that had a very distinct type of pottery, and they were known through the early. It was an early seafaring civilization through the Polynesian islands and stuff like that. And they found pottery in Australia from a very similar time period that they could date, which wasn't attached to that same culture. So basically they've linked it to an indigenous population here in Australia that had pottery, which is a sign of early civilization, that had pottery that lived in Australia tens of thousands of years ago. So it's basically, these were the more advanced people than they thought. So that's an interesting squirrel chase. But like I said, so looking at this culture that has a tradition that goes back 40,000 years, to see the land that they've managed for 40,000 years not being managed properly because a white fella is rather discouraging and frustrating to a lot of indigenous peoples here. That said, it's a passionate topic for me, and I can go on and on about it, which I already have. Let's face it.
You were taking your time back.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, no, it's a matter of also, it's also a very important thing, I think, for each and every one of us in the community to be aware of our own fire safety. Being blacksmith, we can get a little bit lax, let's be honest. When was the last time you went and checked around your workshop, around the outside of your workshop? When was the last time you checked your flues and stuff like that for build up? Because it can be flammable. You can start a flue fire. Flue fires are a real thing, just from the build up of soot and flammable materials inside your flue.
I change my chimney every couple of years. Ain't done it recently because I ain't been lighting the coal forge. I've been using propane because whenever I get out there, it's real quick stuff. But yeah.
I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Like, but for those that do use solid fuel, but even you, Yamas, when did you check for flammable materials around your workshop? I know you've been cleaning up around your yard, and so that as a result has reduced your fuel load.
Well, for one thing, also, where I am, the average humidity is 80 to 85%. I could go out there right now. It hasn't rained in a few hours now. It rains all the time here, so we don't really get a fire is easy to catch because everything's wet, so it'll smoke like crazy if it can even start. Yeah, we've got a cord of firewood that I split and stacked, and it's I'm looking at it, and it's seasoned, but try to say, all right, we're gonna have a bonfire on Friday. Let's hope we can light it. It's we live in a wet area. Alexis, you've been here. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. You just walking from your room to the vehicle. Your shoes are soaked completely through in the morning,
and that goes until about noon. That do lasts, most the entire morning, in the technical sense. Yeah. Well, I live in a swampy area.
And I agree. There's some places where that external fire threat is going to be lower, but that doesn't mean you should to be complacent, because like I said, flue fires are a thing. There's flammable materials inside your forge. I mean, you've had, and I remember years ago when you had the experience, you had a linseed oil rag or something that you left bundled up, and it started smoldering in your workshop. So, and I knew about that from previous experience and other things, but like something as simple as that, having a ember or a hot piece of steel or a hot piece of scale fly into some rags or paper or something like that is a fire hazard that's inside the workshop, you know?
Yeah. And for for those wondering, it's like I live in a swamp area, marshlands and swamp. I'm really, really close to the Dismal Swamp. Hell, I go out. If I were to go out to my road, turn right, or go out. Basically, if I were to go that way, hit the highway, go either way, and then turn, respectively left or right to go that way, I'd be going through miles of swamp. Like between me and Elizabeth City, there's swamp. On the other side of Elizabeth City, there's swamp. North of Elizabeth City, there's swamp. You got the Pascatank River Basin, the Caratoke River Basin, the Albemarle Basin. You've got the Dismal Swamp. You got the Sound and the marshlands surrounding this. It's like I am like the end of my property is like 8 inches above the 100-year floodplain. Like, we don't have to have flood insurance, but our neighbors do. Like, we're just that high up on a hill.
Do you live in Carolina or Louisiana? Like,
yes, exactly.
And then on the other side is the Atlantic swamp.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like we're all the water from the mountains that gather the rain and moisture and everything coming down to the ocean. We're right in, like, if there's a storm that rolls through to the west of us, we get flooding even if it's a blue sky, because like the water table just comes up. I can dig a foot or two down and the hole will be full of water. I do it all the time for work, like I'll be digging and I'll be like, oh, hit the floodplain, for a trench, so yeah, it's somebody, when I did that video of, the hole in the ground forge, for beginners, I had some comments on there, complaining, you can't tell people to do that. You're going to hit peat and light it up on fire. You're going to start a forest fire, blah, blah, blah. It's like, not here. It's like to start. Yeah, not here. Like we do burn farm fields here, but it takes a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, like during the wet season here, a fire isn't that. Yeah. And you are, because it's the opposite time of the year for you guys. But during the wet season here, it's fire risk is not a thing, unless it's inside, in dry material, it's not a concern. But during the dry season, which is the opposite time of year, summer for you guys, fire that fire is more a concern. But I am passionate about fire safety because, and I don't just mean outside but inside as well, inside your workshop, inside your home, because it's a real danger, and as was massively reinforced to me on Friday afternoon, it's something that can go from not my problem to this is life-threatening very, very quickly. So yeah, and again, so that's on topic for a blacksmith podcast, I believe, in the sense that we're talking about fires and all that type of thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've tasted a few squirrels, but here's what it is.
Yeah. As Turtle Dust said, it is a naturally aspirated forge fire.
Yep. And look.
Naturally aspirated grass-fed forge fire.
Yeah.
Yep. And that literally has given me an idea of at one stage to do a short where I use amber in order to fuel my forge. Just even I'll be using a lot of it, because it does burn fast. But I'm going to get some gamba grass and light it and put some air through it and and show just how hot that can get, because
cool.
it was ridiculous.
Yeah. Get one of them.
And you have Wilson just constantly feeding the grass in.
Yeah. I will probably have to get Wilson or Jake. With Jake is another one of my students. He's they've seen my Instagram. He's a local young aspiring knife maker. So yeah, get Wilson or Jake to constantly feed in the gamba grass while I'm cranking. Probably need to have some sort of physical protection because it gets freaking hot. But yeah, I'll work it out. I'll work
Call
it
that
out.
safety
I'll
squint.
try and do a video on it.
You go all Leonardo DiCaprio on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, with that, we've been going for just about an hour and a half. This was actually a great. What?
I said, wow.
Yeah, wow. And actually, that was the how was your week? So now we get into the real show. No. This was a fun one. It was a lot of, as far as final thoughts go, this was a fun one. This was, just, kind of chit chat, and we stayed in topics. We, y'all are saying squirrel this, squirrel that. We actually kind of did, have topics to talk about, so, Adam, I'm sorry to hear that you had, troubles. I was trying to find silver linings, and hopefully you see them too. Alexis, it's like everything going on with you. I'm glad that you're putting the booze down for a bit, even if it's whether it's permanent or temporary. You do you, boo boo. I got nothing but love for you, and hope the best for you. So it's like, I may be absent a lot lately, but like I'm always here for you guys, at the very least in spirit. Know that, I'm still Jamez, but yeah, no, it's this was a good one to, kind of sit and chit chat. I really like the way this one worked out, as far as content, if y'all will, permit me to say that, put it that way. We had it was a natural, good conversation. And going back to the, reason we're doing this format, it's because we don't feel forced to talk about one specific thing. And I think that we did pretty good today. What are y'all's thoughts?
I honestly, this is the way I wanted this new format to kind of work, was where, we just started out talking about our week, and then, out of that, a conversation naturally happens about whatever the hell it might be. And it doesn't have to be anything. I mean, we could be talking, how was your week? Oh, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. And then we go off on a 45-minute spiel about, how we hate going shopping at our local big box store or whatever, but it's just, that's what I kind of wanted it to do, was flow from how was your week into something related that came up in one of our how was your week segments, or how was your fortnight, as it were.
Yeah.
And so this was a good example of how I envisioned this format to work when I kind of brought it up, and I like it. I like the way it flowed. I like the way it was just kind of a natural progression of topic, and it was quite fun. So I'm glad we decided to go with a more naturally flowing
Yes
thing. So and other than that, I mean, yeah. Adam, what do you think?
I was going to say, or a 45-minute conversation about Yama's unreliable vehicles.
we talked about your grass too. So the only one who kind of got screwed out of the deal here in the topic is Alexis, because we spent half the show about my shit, half the show about your shit, and
yeah, but to be fair, I'm not ready to talk about my shit right now.
Heard, so Bite me.
That'll be for the next episode of Alexis Unhinged. But no. My final thoughts is I like this natural flow of conversation. It's a lot more. I struggle to say natural because I've already said it. It's a lot more organic. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. And you guys get to see how we are in regular conversation. I also wanted to say that it's funny. On Saturday evening, I did a forging demonstration at Geek Fest, which is our local youth festival. And it's all gaming and all that type of thing. And as many people know, particularly with the shield behind me, I'm also involved in HEMA. So as part of the HEMA club, I went down and did a live forging demonstration. And I talk about you guys as a community, not just you Yarmez, and you Alexis particularly, but also all you guys in the chat. I talked about you guys extensively when I'm doing my demonstrations and when I'm talking to people about blacksmithing and all that type of thing. And it struck me yesterday just how much I consider you all family, not in the sense of many of you I've never even seen your faces, but you guys are my extended family, my brothers and sisters in smithing. And I feel comfortable knowing that if I was ever anywhere near any of you guys and I needed a place to stay, you'd open up. I feel comfortable that you'd open up your homes for me, and that offer is extended the other way. If you're ever in my neck of the woods, and I could roll out a swag for you in the workshop. And the spiders don't eat much, and the snakes don't really. They just like to snuggle up to the warmth. I'm stirring, of course, but my door's always open as well. But I consider each and every one of you family, and I also, I wouldn't say I'm concerned about you, but I think about you guys often. You guys and girls often. I mean, and a really good example of that from my perspective is many of you guys know Josh Brown, and I hadn't heard from Josh in quite a while. And a couple of weeks ago, I messaged him and said, "Hey, how you going? What's going on? La 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 la." And just for a general catch up, and because as happens, people get caught up in their lives, and you drop contact for a little while, but. I was thinking about him. Was like I sent him a message before I forget, because otherwise it's out of sight, out of mind. And and I was pleased to find out that that his what he explained to me of his personal situation has vastly improved from the last time I spoke to him. So, and that was amazing. And I try and keep contact, with the good old Pointless Wanderer, Matthew at AA. I forget what he's called now, but it was Aimless Adventures, the Pointless Wanderer. But I try and try and message him on a semi sort of regular basis ish as well, because I consider him a good friend. And even though I might not message each and every one of you individually, I do think about you and I do care about you, and I want to let you know that I am thinking about you and I am caring about you, and my thoughts. I won't say prayers because I don't exactly pray, but my thoughts are definitely with you all, no matter what you're doing and no matter what your situation, good or less than so. I do think about you, and there is someone that out here that does care about you and does think about you, and who you just being who you are and just being who you are in the community, your presence makes the world a better place. So I just want to let you know that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that, Josh is having the first annual first degree Forge Hammer in August, and I am fingers crossed trying to make it. It wasn't going to be an issue until I had 14 consecutive days off in a row after I bought my plane tickets to Quad State, and and immediately I'm like, oh, I wish I hadn't bought those plane tickets. Oh, I wish I hadn't bought those plane tickets because, you know, I didn't anticipate having 2 weeks off. And you know, I mean, when it comes down to you start getting little bit nervous about being able to make the bills because I got a couple extra grand laying around. Let me just go ahead and knock this expense out, and I've still got a little bit of cushion. And then you don't work for 2 weeks, and that cushion is gone, and it's just like, oh shit. And so I was going to get all of the tickets at the same time, and I was like, oh, I'll just wait till next payday to get them. And then it's like no work, no work, no work, and I'm like, oh, I may not be able to make it. I'm still fingers crossed. If I'm busy this upcoming week, I'll be good, and I can get my tickets to fly to Atlanta in August and back. And I'm hoping to make it. Matthew's going to be there, and I'm really excited to see him, especially since this last episode of final episode of Alexis Unhinged. I come to find out we have a kind of a similar brain organization thing, which I just always had assumed that that's the way everybody's brain worked, and then I find out it's actually not really a thing. And and then when I was talking about quitting drinking or stopping, not quitting. I'm always going to clarify that there's a difference between stopping and quitting. And he's all like, "Shit, I have to drink it. It's the only way I can turn the voices off in my head." I was like, no, that's why I do what I do, is to just quiet the voices, and then I can sleep. And I'm learning, and I brought this up to my therapist, and I'm using certain techniques to try to shut those voices down without the alcohol. And so far, it's been able to work because I've been tired. And if I'm not tired, they don't shut up. And so I've always used alcohol to solve that problem. And now I'm using other techniques to try to tackle it. And so far, I think we're getting somewhere. And I think it's going to be neat to have a one-on-one conversation with somebody that kind of has the same brain organization system, And so I'm hoping I can make it over for that little hammer in thing. I'm excited to see Josh. I haven't seen him in like 2 years. I think, is it 2 years? Yeah, because yeah, that's right. Because it was 2 years ago when I drove cross country and stopped in and saw Josh and Matthew. But yeah, that's it's. I had something else that I was going to add that was that you brought up in conversation there, Adam, or in your final little bit, and I don't remember what it was. So it must not have been important. Oh yeah, I know what it was. I wanted to bounce off. I mean, it doesn't look like, but there's maybe 2 people left in the chat. I mean, well, obviously there's 7. I'm one of them. But of the guys that are in the chat and still there, what do you think of the way that our this format? Just a quick, I like it. It sucks. Whatever. What do you think about the way we've decided to kind of move our adjust our conversation, our Sunday conversation? And just throw it in there, and we don't necessarily need to sit and wait on a response. But I'd just like to know what you guys think about how we're doing this. That's it.
All right. With that, guys, type in your responses and we'll read them. But we're gonna go ahead and call it. I gotta use the washroom and I gotta cook me up some food because I was hungry. So, yeah, I will. We will see you in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Just think of that scene from Total Recall. 2 weeks. She doesn't say Fortnite. She says 2 weeks. All right. You guys have a wonderful time. Big hearts and bye.